23 years ago, my wife and I started a small ministry in southwest Missouri that's grown quite a bit over the last 2 decades. Today, we offer emergency shelter services. We have a long-term recovery program for men focused on character development and work readiness. We have a family center that helps moms and kids struggling with homelessness. We even have a respite unit where folks that are coming out of the hospital discharging but don't have anywhere to go, they're able to come into our respite unit. We also have a robust food ministry where we're helping hundreds of families in our area with tens of thousands of pounds of food every year. But the thing that I want to communicate today that I think is so important is that a majority of the needs that are met through our mission are earned by people through our Worth Shop. This is a ministry that we run where people are crafting goods. They're creating things that go to market, and they're actually earning the very basics of food, shelter, clothing, and the like. Work awakens worth. That's why we call it a Worth Shop. And what we found is that you're either at work or you're in dependency. It's one or the other. I don't know if you've heard of the book Toxic Charity by Robert Lupton, but he talks about 5 steps to dependency. If you give something to somebody once, they'll appreciate it. If you give the same thing to that person again, they'll anticipate that you're going to do it a 3rd time. If you give it a 3rd time, they're going to have an expectation that you'll do it a 4th. If you give it a 4th time, they'll feel entitled to it, and a 5th time, they'll be dependent on you for it. It's appreciation, anticipation, expectation, entitlement, and dependency. I have seen that downward track for far too many people. And after more than 20 years of working among the poor, and now working with leaders across the nation in various cities who are also fighting poverty, I'm convinced that we are in a national crisis of dependency. In fact, I would say that dependency is a national epidemic. Consider for just a moment that there are more people who are dependent on federal anti-poverty programs than there are people living in poverty. Just in the food stamp program alone, we have 5 million people dependent on it who are above the poverty line. Not to mention that if we look at those who are below the poverty line, which is about 37 million Americans, almost all of them are dependent on the government in some form or another, 96%. And a Pew Charitable Foundation study found that about 70% of them will never escape. What that means is that we have about 24.8 million Americans today who are on a trajectory to die in dependent poverty. Dependency is a national epidemic. Marvin Olasky, in his book, The Tragedy of American Compassion, he wrote aptly. He said, dependency is merely slavery with a smiling mask. I believe that FDR would have agreed in his 1935 State of the Union address. He compared dependence on relief as a subtle narcotic, a destroyer of the human spirit. Now, FDR said it, but I know a woman named Jocelyn who actually lived it. For 10 years, actually more than that, she was a needle drug addict living on the streets, came into our mission, came to faith in Christ, got clean, but she didn't give up her food stamps. It was a lot of work for us to convince her that she had the ability to provide for herself. And when she finally did voluntarily give up her food stamp card, her trajectory changed. She ended up going to college, got her master's degree, and now she runs one of our shelters. You can imagine reporters were interested in doing a story. And there before the camera, in an interview with a reporter, she said, it was harder for me to give up food stamps than it was for me to give up heroin. Dependency is a form of slavery that's holding millions of Americans back from living the flourishing life that God intended. And for Jocelyn, her dignity, her freedom, the flourishing life she lives, it didn't come through welfare or food stamps. It came through faith, friendships, and work. And let me leave you with this last comment from a woman I met last week named Selena, who is also homeless. And she said, I just want to thank you for doing the things the way that you do them. Allowing me to work for my bed and my meals has allowed me to feel like I can keep my dignity. For Selena, it's the same. She also will step into the flourishing life through faith, friendship, and work.